Good day. It is my privilege to present to you our study entitled Distance Learning and Sign Language for the Receiving Teachers and Learning Facilitators Handling Lsen with Hearing Impairment in the Division of Cavite. I'm Maria Theresa Obrero, a Master Teacher 1 of Bagong Pook Elementary School. Together with me is my co-author, Dr. Maria Victoria B. Maligayo, our EPS in SPED in the Division of Cavite. Our study rooted actually due to the increasing number of Lsen with hearing impairment. Therefore, the Division Memorandum 20 series of 2018 implemented also sign language in schools with hearing impairment. This also aims to strengthen the inclusive education in the division. This study focused on the level of communication in sign language of the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators or the parents or guardians to the Lsen with hearing impairment before and after the implementation of the program in distance learning. We all know that we are now in the new normal setting. Therefore, our key literature that was actually being anchored in our study, according to Sahot L. and Malabanan R. of 2019, teaching basic sign language improved regular learners' interpersonal behavior towards Lsens, and there was an improvement in the academic performance and self-esteem of Lsens, which affirms the reduction of gaps between regular class and learners with hearing impairment. Also, Chufinda and Mendieta of 2017 mentioned that most teachers of the hearing impaired did not have sufficient skills in sign language to use it as a medium of instruction. Therefore, this study has also crafted research questions. Number 1, what is the level of communication of the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators or the parents or guardians to those Lsen with hearing impairment before and after the implementation of sign language in the division of Cavite? After knowing also the communication level of our participants, the second question is there a significant difference between the level of communication of the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators handling Lsen with hearing impairment before and after the sign language implementation? And also, this study aims also to know how does the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators perceive the importance of sign language in teaching Lsen with hearing impairment. Now, for the methodology of this study, the research designs utilized in this study is a descriptive, comparative, qualitative, or a quantitative and quantitative design. We also utilize a quantitative design in gathering also the level of communication of the participants, and also for the perceived importance of the learning facilitators in the receiving teachers and the implementation of sign language, we utilize it one in a qualitative form. Now for the sampling of the study, we do have 107 receiving teachers and also 22 learning facilitators. The data gathering methods that we use also follows in the process we're in. We also give the questionnaires or the online questionnaires to our participants to gather also the level of communication, the pre-test and the post-test, as well as the data gathering also based on the SPED teachers handling also the learning facilitators and the receiving teachers engaging in this program. For the data analysis, we utilize the frequency, the mean, and the standard deviation in knowing also the level of communication of the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators. In knowing the significant difference, paired t-test was utilized. And for the qualitative part, we do have the contextual analysis based on the perceived importance of the receiving teachers and the learning FASI in the implementation of sign language. Now, for the findings of this study, this is actually the SOP 1 and 2, which falls on the communication level of the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators before and after the implementation of the program, which means this is actually the pre-test and the post-test results of the participants. In our receiving teachers on the first column, also followed by the learning facilitators, we do have there the level of from the elementary level, because we do have the elementary and the secondary level. So in the elementary level, we have the receiving teachers and the learning FASI. From the below basic, receiving teachers are actually 0, but the learning facilitators falls 14. 14 of them out of 19 falls on the below basic. And for the basic, 35 in the pre-test, 55 in the pre-test, and in the post-test, it turns into 23 for the elementary. And in the proficient level, 34 from the pre-test, and it actually escalates into 60 out of 98 receiving teachers. It therefore concludes also that you can see based on the adjectival rating, the receiving teachers in the elementary level, it falls actually on the basic level in the pre-test, and it has an increase going into proficient level. For the learning facilitators in the pre-test, they are actually belong to the below basic, but after the implementation, it turns into a basic level. Therefore, you can see there is also an increase based on the data presented or the results of the participants. Now, for the secondary, we do have our receiving teachers, a total of 9, and we also have 3 learning facilitators. Now, for the receiving teachers for the pre-test, they are actually on the basic level, but after the implementation or the post-test, they actually escalated into proficient level. For the learning FASI, same also with the learning FASI in elementary, that they started actually from a below basic, and then after the implementation, they fall into a basic level. Now, for our SOP 3, for the significant difference between the communication level of the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators before and after the implementation of the program. As you can see there, that the post-test has 3.1484 for the standard deviation, and the pre-test has 3.2702. Wherein there, we do have also a total of 121 participants in this study. For the t-value, it has a negative 13.62, wherein the critical value is 1.98. Therefore, it is actually, the calculated exceeds the critical value of 13.065 and less than also to greater than to the critical value of 1.98. So it means that there is actually a significant difference on the results of the pre-test and the post-test of our receiving teachers and learning facilitators. Now, let's proceed to our SOP 4. The perceived importance and experiences of the receiving teachers and the learning facilitators in using sign language in teaching Lsen with hearing impairment. Here, on our first table, the perceived importance of sign language according to the receiving teachers, followed by the learning facilitators. 47 actually of the receiving teachers perceive that it is a tool for communication for the PWD or hearing impaired and in giving instructions, followed by to understand the PWD with hearing impairment. And the least, there are 5 actually who did not answer. They abstained of giving also their perception. Now for the learning facilitators, 7 out of 19 said that it is a way of communicating our family member who is a deaf child, or shall we say Lsen with hearing impairment, and followed by a tool for communication of the PWD, which is also 5, and to understand my child with hearing impairment, which is 2. Now, let's proceed to the experiences in using sign language. As you can see based on the table or the results that 26 actually mentioned that they experience it is hard at first, but it needs to practice to memorize, and it's fun, according to the receiving teachers. Followed also with the 24 teachers who mentioned it is hard and challenging to learn. And 19 mentioned it is enjoyable and exciting. Now, for our learning facilitators, 7 of them mentioned it is enjoyable and exciting. So, as you can see, based on our results coming from the elicited responses coming from our participants, yes, it is actually somewhat difficult, but it is really fun and they find it also very important. Therefore, the implications of this study, the merits of this study show the significance of the systemic approach in improving the delivery of education amidst pandemic, especially to those Lsen with hearing impairment. It showed also the affirmative reception of the participants towards the implementation. And the conclusion of this study, the level of communication in sign language of the receiving teachers before the program is basic, with a mean score of 8.07 for the elementary and 5.56 for the secondary, and the learning facilitators gained 2.23 and 3.0 respectively. And after the program, the receiving teachers belong now to the proficient level with 11.54 in the elementary and 12.22 in the secondary. Learning facilitators from the basic level with 9.54 and 8.0 mean score. The calculated exceeds the critical value of negative 13.62, so the means are actually significantly different. The receiving teachers perceived the importance of sign language as a tool for communication of the Lsen with hearing impaired, wherein 47 receiving teachers or 43.93 out of 107 receiving teachers out of 14 learning facilitators or 7 out of, or 50% perceived it as a way of communication to their family members, which is a deaf member. Receiving teachers experience sign language positively, wherein 73 or 68.22 out of 107 RTs or receiving teachers and 31 receiving teachers conveys negative experiences towards sign language. Out of 14 learning facilitators, 7 or 50% experience sign language as enjoyable and fun. Therefore, for the recommendations of this study, the team has seen its benefits and intends to continue as a part of an intervention that remediates the current situation of having the new platform of teaching and learning. It also intends to influence the policymakers of the educational system to take into consideration the merits and attributions generated by the study. And these are all our references, and thank you for listening.